Your dreams are bigger, bolder, and more badass than the life you're living now, but something just keeps getting in the way. Join certified coach and former therapist Diane Wingert for the Driven Woman podcast. She'll show you how to get rid of whatever is holding you back so you can stop spinning your wheels and up-level your life. Get ready to hop in and buckle up. This is the Driven Woman podcast, and we're heading for the fast lane.
Well, hey there, driven woman. I'm just going to warn you straight up from the top. This episode is going to be a little different than most of the others. First of all, it's going to be a little shorter than you've come to expect from the driven woman. It's going to have my typical honest, direct, and authentic presence, but it's going to be a lot more personal and involve storytelling, current events, and I promise some meaningful and useful advice. You ready? Okay, let's do this. First of all, if you hear a little bit of an echo, I apologize because I am 1 week into our new home and my podcasting equipment just arrived within the last 24 hours. I couldn't find it. It was delivered to the wrong room in the house and got mixed in with some other boxes. And I was scrambling around looking for my old podcast equipment to see if I could make do with that, which meant I didn't have time to set up the soundproofing. Now, I could have just canceled this episode or substituted one of the half a dozen or so guest episodes that have already been pre-recorded. Could just handed that over to my team, and maybe you wouldn't have known the difference. Maybe you wouldn't have cared. Hey, maybe you would have even preferred that to what I'm about to give you. But this podcast has taught me so much in the almost 2 years since I started it. And the most important thing it taught me is that as much as I have a lifelong history of winging it, and following my passions and really doing rather well just flying by the seat of my pants, you really can't get away with that and have a show that is within the first year and a half risen to the top 2.5% of podcasts globally. You can look that up on Listen Notes. You're not going to be able to have a really successful podcast winging it. If you could, I probably would try. But one of the reasons why I delayed launching a show for almost 2 years is because I really didn't trust that I could or would be consistent. So what I decided to do for this episode is to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes about what happens when you are a reformed procrastinator, a recovering perfectionist, and a lifelong fly by the seat of her pants winging it spontaneity expert who has learned to be consistent, who has learned to plan ahead, and who has learned that that will actually bring you closer to reaching your goals and to do so in alignment with what really, really matters. Now, I need to take you back about 3 years, even before I started this podcast. 3 years ago, my husband and I had both made the change to working online. I had a successful psychotherapy practice that I closed and took my business online and became a coach. He had resigned from his faculty position and went to work for a global research company. So both of us were working remotely. And we made the exciting and courageous decision to leave Los Angeles, where I had been since birth, and he had been for over 25 years. We moved from Los Angeles to Portland, Oregon, where, by the way, we knew no one. We just knew that it was a city we liked a lot. We had visited a number of times, and we were excited by the prospect of calling a brand new city home. Well, things didn't work out over the last few years quite the way we intended, and I'm sure that it's no surprise that COVID had a huge impact on our relocation to Portland. In barely 3 years of being there, I could count on one hand how many people I had seen more than once or really gotten to know. So we had another important decision to make now that COVID is starting to shift a little bit. Things are starting to open up. We had to decide if we wanted to continue in Portland or try something else. Frankly, I missed my kids who all live in California, and I missed being able to be outside most of the year. Of course, I knew that it rains a lot in Portland, and I love how green it is there. But there was no way for me to know that COVID would happen. Hey, there was no way for any of us to know that COVID would happen. And we had to do a hard look at the change that we made 3 years ago and what we wanted to do now. Well, if you are on my email list or you follow me on social media, you already know that we decided to do something else. So in about 6 weeks' time, we sold our house, bought a new one, packed everything ourselves while both of us worked full time, and moved. Now, that's, you might think, impressive. You might think it's courageous. You might think it's foolhardy. You might think it's stupid. But in order to relocate twice in barely 3 years, you really do need to know why you're doing what you're doing and have a plan to follow. So my lifelong habit of just doing things spontaneously, doing things because I felt like it, doing things because they sounded exciting, that wasn't going to fly. There was too much at stake. So I already had a couple of years of practice with this podcast under my belt by the time we made the decision to move from Portland to a small city in California near Palm Springs. But we had to have a really solid plan because it wasn't like we could both just quit working for 6 weeks while we prepared for our new life. And what I think is interesting about all this is not that we've relocated twice. I mean, that might be boring to you or not. But what I've learned from the fact that I can plan, I can be consistent, I can look farther ahead in my life than I ever have in the past. But that's not always going to see you through. As a matter of fact, in spite of our impeccable planning, nothing in the last 2 weeks has gone the way we thought it would, or the way we were promised it would, because we did sell our house and we were happy with that. We did buy our new house and we were happy with that. Where things got interesting is that as a result of COVID and all of the changes to our economy, to the workforce, to the cost of transportation and fuel, to the availability of moving vans and people to drive them, we ended up having to spend way more money to move back to California than we spent leaving it 3 years ago. In addition to that, we expected that it would take us about a week to move once the moving van came and took our things away. But that's not what happened either. As a matter of fact, we didn't see our stuff for almost 2 weeks. So our plan was, these are the things that we need to drive the 2 days with our 2 older dogs and ourselves, drive the 2 days from Oregon to California and have the basic things that we needed for a couple of days until the moving van arrived. Well, that couple of days turned into 10 days. And when all you have is a couple of pairs of jeans, a few pairs of underwear, a couple of t-shirts, a hairdryer, thank God for the hairdryer, a couple of towels, a couple of toothbrushes, and the basic necessities for your dogs, those extra few days of waiting really, really help you get in touch with so many things that I want to share with you. I was so proud of myself that we had a plan. I was so proud of myself that we were working the plan. We were anticipating and putting things in place that we thought would make this a very smooth move. But none of that mattered at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, we don't have any control over what happens to our stuff after it leaves our house. We didn't have any control over the fact that it did not leave our house and go into a moving van and hit the road pointed in the direction of our new home. Instead, all those boxes and furniture and other possessions went into a van, went to a warehouse, and sat there I don't know how long until Another group of people transported those boxes and pieces of furniture and other items onto other vehicles. I don't know how many sets of hands our possessions passed through, but what I do know is when it finally got here, almost every single box was completely crushed. All of the big wardrobe boxes that have a rod across so that you can put your clothing on hangers and put them in the box, every one of them, the rod was on the bottom of the box along with all of our clothing, just heaped in a big pile. Many pieces of china and crystal are broken, and some of them go back to my husband's family 100 years ago. They cannot be replaced. My standing desk appears to be broken, and I haven't even had the courage to connect my Peloton yet because I don't know what shape it's in. Now, boo-hoo, first world problems. You have a standing desk and a Peloton, so I don't exactly feel sorry for you. I get it. And even though it sounds like I'm complaining, if you know me at all, you know that I really don't have much tolerance for complaining because complaining never changes anything. Complaining is talking about something that's already happened, and anything that's already happened, you can do absolutely nothing about. I'm giving you the details of the story so that what I'm about to tell you will have some context. I'll be right back after this message. Hey, it's Diane with a quick interruption to the episode because I've got a couple questions I just need to ask you. One, are you where you want to be in your business? Are you making the money you want to make, working the hours you want to work, seeing the clients that you want to see, and getting the income and impact that you went into business to get? And if the answer is no, what's holding you back? Why is there a gap between where you are and where you want to be? Do you know the answer? In my experience working with female solopreneurs, so many of them don't even really know what's standing in their way, and that is so frustrating. So I created a little quiz called What's Holding You Back? There's a link to it in the show notes. If this is you, please take the quiz, and if you do, DM me on Instagram at Coach Diane Wingert and let me know your results. Now, on the other hand, if you already know what's holding you back, if you already know what the obstacles are that are getting in your way from achieving the income and impact that you deserve and desire, then I don't want you to take the quiz. Forget about the quiz. Go directly to the other link in the show notes and book a consult with me. I may be the very coach, and this may be the year that you put all of that behind you and really have the business that you went into business to have. For everybody else, keep on listening. And if you find value in what you hear, don't forget to leave me a rating and review on Apple or wherever you're listening. Here we go, back to the show.
Well, one thing that you helped give me insight on is how sensitive I am. And because I'm an empath, being in traffic and loud noises throughout the day, just getting to homes, that alone was really draining. And now working from home, it's like I'm able to conserve that energy and working with the parents to really teach them kind of concepts and bigger things that have a bigger impact. Because one thing that you also mentioned was because I was working so much, I didn't have time to do the things that were meaningful to me, and that included learning. Getting into the grind, you kind of just like, okay, well, I'm just going to do instead of really stepping back and looking at more strategic ways to have, a longer term plan.
So here's the thing. You can be a planner, or you can be a fly by the seat of your pants kind of person, the way I always was. But no matter what your expectations or how you live your life, things don't always go the way you want them to. Things don't go the way you expect they will. And no matter how meticulously you plan, actual real life often goes in a completely different direction. I'm very fond of the expression that if everything went the way we thought it would, what would we talk about? Now, that is a little bit sarcastic, and if you know me at all, you know that I do love me some sarcasm. But in truth, the beautiful wedding that goes according to plan is beautiful. But I promise you, it's not nearly as memorable as the one where the little ring bearer, who happens to be a Frenchie or a pit bull, throws up on the bride's dress. That wedding will be memorable. People will be talking about it for months, if not years. Tell me if I'm wrong. Now, when everything goes according to plan and our expectations are met, most of us just check that experience off our list and move on. We rarely, if ever, unless we have a formal gratitude practice, we rarely stop and think how fortunate and how unusual it is that everything went according to plan. Think about it. Go back in your history, your relationship history, your academic history, your work history, your personal health history. Can you honestly say in any area of your life that you had a plan and you worked the plan and things turned out exactly as you wished, wanted, hoped, and expected they would? I don't think so. I think most human suffering comes from disappointment. And most disappointment has a common cause: expectations, right? Many people say, oh, I don't really expect anything. I'm just, I'm just here for it. I'm just kind of going with the flow. Whatever happens is fine. But we don't really mean that. We want what we want, and we don't want what we don't want. One of the biggest decisions I've made, which I don't even think I realized what a big decision it was at the time, but the decision to actually embrace the Buddhist philosophy as my lifestyle, which I think of really more as a philosophy of life rather than a religion for me. But what a huge impact it has had on my life, especially at times like this. Now, I am down with having a little bit of a tantrum when all my clothes end up at the bottom of a box. And when my Spode Christmas tree china that I have literally been collecting for 40 years ends up broken. Or my husband's china that his grandmother left him that's been in the family forever and his grandmother's gone. We could never replace that. Do I feel like having a little bit of a tantrum? Yes, I do. You better believe I do. Do I exchange a few words? Maybe even a few swear words? I'm human, for goodness sake. But once I've expressed those emotions, I move into looking for the bright side. It can be really annoying to other people who tend to be more fond of feeling like a victim or being a complainer or just having a more negative, pessimistic outlook than I do. But I've learned that if I don't bypass my emotions, I actually let myself feel the feels. Like if I'm annoyed, I'm annoyed. If I'm disappointed, I'm disappointed. If I'm a little bit frickin' outraged, I'm frickin' outraged. But I don't stay there for long because I know that the thoughts that sustain those emotions make me unhappy. And there's nothing I can actually do about the past. There's nothing I can do about the broken china or the crumpled clothing other than make a claim with the moving company, which you better believe I'm going to do. But the biggest thing I was worried about is that I wasn't going to have my podcast equipment in time to honor my commitment to record this episode. You see, I record my guest interviews weeks and sometimes months in advance because I'm working with other people's schedules. When it comes to my solo episodes like this one, I prefer to record them much closer to the actual release date. I don't do that because I'm procrastinating. I've actually selected the titles and the topics and have started the research or planning the outline weeks, if not months in advance. But today, I decided not to record the episode that I had planned. I'm not going to even tell you the name of it because I'm probably going to release it in a few weeks. But I realized that what I've experienced over these last 6 weeks, and frankly, the last 3 years, I think has value. I am a recovering procrastinator, a reformed perfectionist, and someone who is developing adaptability, emotional resiliency, and gratitude every single day. It's always a choice. Do I think that makes me better than you or anyone, or even better than a former version of myself? Not really. That's not for me to say. What I can tell you is that I feel more capable. I feel more confident. I can live my life with more courage. And I'm not trying so damn hard to control every little thing. I don't think I realized how controlling I really was. I thought I was just striving for excellence. I've come to understand that there's a big difference between planning and trying to work your plan and controlling life and resisting reality. I think most suffering comes from resisting reality. Now, if you ask me, would I rather have had my clothes show up in the condition they were when I put them in the box? Hell yeah, you know that. Would I have preferred that all my stuff showed up on time instead of 10 days late? Absolutely. It's not been easy camping in an empty house with nothing but a borrowed air mattress that leaks and a couple of dogs and a couple of towels. But oddly, because we didn't have Wi-Fi, we didn't know anybody in our new neighborhood, it actually gave my husband and I a lot of time together, a lot of time with our little doggies, and a lot of time to really appreciate how little we actually need to get by. We've been getting by just fine. Could I record this podcast much earlier than I did? Could I have recorded the podcast I initially intended for this episode if our stuff arrived sooner? Yes. Would it have been better? I doubt it. Because going through shit in life is how we learn. It's how we grow. And it's frankly how we become better people. Now, I can't tell you when shit happens that I can immediately feel grateful for it. It's a process. Like I said, I don't want to bypass my genuine emotions. But what I do want to do every day to the best of my ability is to live a life that's in alignment with my values of integrity, consistency, creating value, and being who I really am. Just being authentically me. So if that's something you're working on, if you are wanting to be more grateful, if you're wanting to be more mindful, if you're wanting to manage your own perfectionistic, procrastinating, controlling tendencies better, schedule a consult with me. I would love to help you. And if not, I hope that this episode reaches you where you are today and held some value for you, whatever your struggle may be. Okay, folks, that's all for now. I will see you again next week with an amazing guest interview. Have an awesome week.
You've been listening to the Driven Woman podcast with Diane Wingert. Want more straight talk and strategy each week that will take you from spinning to winning? Don't forget to hit subscribe in your podcast player so you won't miss a single episode. Then head on over to the Driven Woman free and private Facebook group community. See you there.